Hi there, welcome back to the 80s Toy Museum, and Batmonth continues. Oh boy, this is awesome. It is the stealth launch Batmobile, aka the Tumbler. I remember seeing this at Toys R Us when this first came out back in 2008, which is when the Dark Knight movie came out. And the cool thing about this Tumbler is that it is 1/18th scale, roughly, which is basically G.I. Joe sized. And it has an ejecting Bat Pod. So my favorite Batman vehicle of all of them is the Bat Pod. The moment this thing blows up, or is about to blow up in the Dark Knight, and that thing comes out and shoots out, it was love at first sight. I have loved a lot of the Batmobile versions, but when I saw the Bat Pod, the fact that it had been in there the whole time, that those are the Bat Pod wheels right there, not necessarily in the toy, but in the movie, that this newfangled motorcycle of Batman's was actually in there all along, part of the Tumbler, which is another awesome version of the Batmobile. And just the way it moves in the movie, I just absolutely loved it. Passed on it at the toy store and regretted it for years and years and years. But thanks to a recent trip to Heroes Comics, they had a mint in box one. The tape was even still sealed. You can see that I have had a very fun private unboxing with this. Just opening it up and taking all of the wraps off and playing around with it, and man, it's extremely fun. The action feature of the Bat Pod shooting out, and I'll show that to you in a second. And there it is, absolutely magnificent. So generally I prefer toys over models. I do love the detail in some model miniatures, but generally if I had a choice between a toy version of something and a model version, I'll take the toy version because I'm a Butterfingers. I drop things, so I like having plastic, especially this awesome bendy. Look at this. There's some bigger tumblers. I've got, I think it's a Mafex tumbler, or maybe it's a Revoltech little miniature one, and it is frightening. And that's a bummer when you're trying to play around with something, but you're concerned that you're going to break it because it's so fragile. It just takes the enjoyment out of being able to be hands-on. So knowing this is this kind of floppy plastic is very reassuring to me. And I wanted to just mention about the actual unboxing process. It was very model-like though. So even though this is a toy version of the Tumbler, the detail in it is exceptional. And the packing of it, it came with these cool little things that you had to actually turn it in order to release it from the cardboard it was bolted down on, like a model. And I want to mention this too, it was a little thing, but I just really appreciated it. It's really annoying when twist ties are all twisted together for 8 miles under the box, and you don't have a pair of side cutters handy, so you're just untwisting and untwisting. I've never seen this before, but this little thing was under there, and it wrapped around these posts, and it made it really, really easy to just unwrap it off of that. Haven't seen that since they did that. I wish that was the standard way of securing these types of things in their packaging. Check out the Batman!
Now there's a Batman.
That is so awesome that you can see him in there through the windows. Yeah, so it is an actual vehicle that can hold not just a figure, but also the Bat Pod is in there. But that just is so, so cool. I love when you're able to see a driver inside a vehicle like that, ever so subtly. And I'm surprised I'm able to light him up this well, because last night when I was playing around with this, I could only see him in there if I turned the flashlight on my phone and stuck it right up to the window. So there's a couple of windows, but these are just black. They're solid, no light travels through them. The only ones that are clear windows are on the front there. And he is in hunched down position, ready to eject in the Bat Pod, which I'll show you in just a few minutes time. But first I want to show you some of the details. So the front wheels don't actually function. which is, you know, if you want to try to always look on the bright side of things. It would have been cool if these actually worked, since they're big wheels and they really should work. But what makes it roll is actually these little not so tough looking wheels underneath. So that's a potential braking hazard. Those are pretty tiny for such a big bulky vehicle. I guess if you want to look on the plus side of that, your wheels will always be fantastic and never have any wear and tear on them because they don't touch the ground. But they certainly look like they do. I mean, that's right close to the ground. I got the camera right level with the ground here. It looks like it's touching, but it's really not, or just barely. Like if I'm able to move it with this tiny amount of pressure, it's just barely touching. And I'll look at some more of the detail on this thing. I know they've made some really big tumblers, Hot Wheels, and some other companies. There's the gigantic Hot Toys 1/6 scale tumbler. But for a 1/18 scale tumbler, a G.I. Joe size tumbler, the detail in this is incredible, and the size of it is incredible. Let me pull out a Snake Eyes figure here. Another Dark Knight. And I'm not a super stickler when it comes to things having to be in scale to the millimeter, but that looks perfect to me because the tumbler's a tank. It's like an urban tank car type of thing, so it doesn't really get much better than that. They did do some 4-inch sized Batman figures. I did try sticking one of these 5-inch Batman figures in there, and he's just a little oversized for it. But I'm going to have to take a look around and see if I can find one of the 4-inch Dark Knight figures, because I think he'd look great in here if you took the Bat Pod out. And speaking of the Bat Pod, there are 2 buttons on this thing, and they're actually labeled 1 and 2. And that's the order you have to hit them in. If you hit 2, there's a little resistance. I don't want to press it too hard because he might just plow into the front of the tumbler in there. Number 1, when you press it, it opens the whole tumbler up. And it's actually pretty dynamic too. Wow! That's what I'm talking about. Toy instead of model. Models can't do that. That is incredible. Let's see that again. Let's close it up. It's actually really simple. You just push that down, and then these are on the sides. And while I've got the missiles out, I'm going to load the missile launchers. I'm going to load up the missiles. 2 missiles were included. That's something that's always missing on these Batmobiles. I've noticed on eBay, I've been looking for one of those Bat missile Batmobiles where the sides come off. It's a Tim Burton Batmobile, but it's the bigger second version. And the missiles are often missing on those. I don't even know how to shoot these. Oh, there's a little thing on the side there. You just push the end there and it should fire. Well, that one's not actually working all that well. It's kind of hard to grip. Well, it's funny. The spring to open up the tumbler is really strong. The spring to eject the Bat Pod is insane. But it looks like the springs for the missile launchers, and that makes sense. You know, if kids are or were going to be playing with this, they wouldn't want this to be a choking hazard or shoot someone's eye out. And now that I've actually stuck these in there, I actually don't like the color. I don't think the red really goes with the whole dark motif of it. I'll just leave it in there for the sake of the rest of the review, but I think after I'm done, I'm just going to be pulling them out. So these side panels need to go in. You just push that down, fit that in, stick it in. The thing I love about the tumbler is it's so angular. There's always a place to hold on to for when you're doing that. Now let's eject it once again. give you a bird's eye view from the front of what that looks like. Oh, that's so cool. And there is the Batman inside in his Bat Pod, and the smooth Raoul is not going to be able to handle this much unsafe 80s spring-loaded power, so I'm going to actually put him on the ground.
Damage catastrophic. Eject sequence initiated. Goodbye.
And here's a 360 of the Bat Pod. Really small, but still awesome detail in it. Very sparse, if any, paint applications on it, but it doesn't really need it. It's got the detail of a model, but the really nice thing about it, once again, the floppy plastic. These can be such a fragile part. On the bigger versions, Hot Wheels, and the model versions, Hot Toys. Thank goodness for this rubbery plastic here. It kind of looks like, do these actually move a little bit? A little bit. I don't want to force it, but just enough. Well, the one on the other side doesn't move, so maybe it's not supposed to. And you do get a Batman figure included. I don't know if you can actually call it a figure. It's not a posable figure anyway. He's permanently in a riding pose. And the advantage of that is that sometimes when you get a regular, very posable figure, they don't sit right in there, especially with the head. A lot of the time, they're kind of looking down. They need to be in an actual riding pose in order to get the head up enough to be riding like that. I am interested in getting one of those 4-inch Batman figures to see how he'll look on this thing. I don't think he'll look as good as this thing, despite it not being posable. And it looks like, yeah, he is removable. So his hands, he's really nice and floppy. So it doesn't look like it's going to be all that difficult to remove him. There's a little ball on the end to keep his hands from accidentally sliding off, and it doesn't take all that much pressure to pull that off. And feels like he's being held in here by something. Not sure what. His feet do peg in the back here, but I cannot get the gosh darn Batman off of this thing. Feet are unpegged, hands are unpegged. Wow, look how rubbery the arms are. It's a separate, really rubbery piece. It's actually articulated. It moves up and down, but the body won't come off. He's really, really stuck in there. I don't know if he's glued in there or you just need a crowbar to get him off there. Maybe anyone out there who has one of these and is more familiar with it, let me know if it's possible to take him off. Kind of wanted to try Snake Eyes riding the Bat Pod, but I don't really feel like breaking my brand new Batman and Bat Pod, so I think I'll skip that for now. And it's not a soft goods cape. It's just hard plastic, which is nice because it just kind of looks like it's flying straight behind him instead of just laying flat down statically. Super easy to get him back on there thanks to the really, really rubbery hands. And to reinsert the Bat Pod in the tumbler, you just roll it into there. When it stops, I guess the easiest way I'm finding is to just grab the front wheel here and grab it by the back here and just push until you hear that click, and then he's in there and secure. But let's take a look at what he looks like with a couple of other Batman figures sitting in there without the Bat Pod.
Goodbye.
Now, the nice thing about this tumbler is you don't actually have to put a figure in there and then close it all up. You don't actually have to ever use that feature if you don't want to. You can have your Bat Pod be a separate thing, have it off on display somewhere else, and it's got a hatch on the top, which totally reminds me of my old original General Lee from Mego. 3 3/4 inch scale General Lee. Fall Guy truck also had that. A latch in the top, and you can just pop a figure in through there. So the first one I'm going to try is the Keaton 89 Batman figure. So even though this figure is a 5-inch figure and he's a little big for this thing, he easily fits with tons of headroom. Tons. So you can use 5-inch figures in here easily. It's not even close to hitting his horns. And there he is. In there. Peeking in there. So that's actually really, really impressive with how easily an oversized figure fits in there. And if you do have a 3 3/4 inch or a 4-inch figure like Snake Eyes here, he is just swallowed by this thing. If you just stick him in there, sit him in there, like, yeah, he's lost in the shadows, and you probably won't see him in there even with light. But if there was a way to add seats to this thing, I should probably not use Snake Eyes since he's just disappearing in there.
Hey, all right. Here's a little known fact.
No, Cliff, it's not a little known fact that you're 3 3/4 inches. Well, he shows up nice. It's about as far back as he goes if you don't push the spring back. If you do push it all the way back so it's in launch mode, he'll go even further back. So there isn't really actually enough room to sit 2 guys side by side, I don't think. Well, look at that, there is. If you want to get some seats, maybe some of those removable seats from the Tomahawk or the Sky Striker, this Tumbler is a 2-seater. That's amazing. With plenty. Let's try to push them back a little bit. I'm getting caught on some gears and stuff in there. But this thing will easily close with both figures in there. And that's really impressive. And you can see what I'm talking about when I say, like, how tiny, even though these guys are the proper scale, look how low they're sitting in there. A chair would definitely help elevate them and make them a little more visible. Oh, you can see Snake Eyes just barely through there. And it's also probably a rough ride for them if you open this up. Oh, look at that. I thought they'd be flying all over the place in there, but they're pretty secure. And here's a cool feature I just discovered. If you grab it by the front here and lift it ever so slightly, has kind of a bouncy action, and the guns or missile launchers pop up. And here's the Bat Pod side by side with the Tumbler. So it's really nice that you actually get 2 different toys basically. If you wanted to display them side by side like that on the shelf, maybe get one of those 4-inch Batman figures, stick him in as a driver, and then have the Bat Pod either in front or beside it. 2 toys in one, plus an incredible, super fun ejection feature. So much just raw power to it. Think roller in a Japanese Optimus Prime ejecting out of the trailer. And even though this came out in 2008, it feels like a brand new toy to me. Not just in the sense that it's mint condition, but the sculpting, the engineering, the play feature on it is just all top notch. Doesn't feel outdated. Can you believe it's been 14 years since The Dark Knight came out? Time flies when you're having fun. So hope you enjoyed this review and had fun. Thank you very much to the Patreon tribe. Glad all of you folks are having fun on patreon.com/Michael Mercy. Thank you also to the channel panel members. Gotta get a Batman emoji in there someday. And to join the Bat Tribe, hit subscribe. Nerd mistake.